The thing about a rural mail route is that it teaches you patience. Every dirt road, every mailbox on a post that's leaning a little further each year, every farm dog that charges the truck and then stands there wagging its tail once you've stopped, all of it teaches you that the world moves at its own pace, and you can either fight that or you can settle into it. I'd been settling into it for 6 years by the time that September morning changed everything. 6 years of the Lakeford Loop, 41 stops, the same gravel shoulders and the same soybean fields going gold at the edges, and I'd learned to read the quiet of it the way a man learns to read his own kitchen. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a good life, and it was mine, and on the mornings when Sam rode with me, it felt like more than enough. Sam was 9 that fall. He liked riding with me on Saturdays when school was out, and September was still warm enough that he'd leave the window down and let his hand ride the wind outside, fingers spread, testing the air at different angles like he was gathering data. He was a talker, not the kind that fills silence with noise, but the kind that asks real questions and then actually waits for the answers. He'd gotten that from somewhere other than me, I figured. I talked when I had to. Sam talked because he was genuinely interested in whatever crossed his path. He'd asked me, sometime the previous spring, why we moved to Lakeford. He'd framed it the way he framed most things, without accusation, purely curious. Was it for the route? He'd said. I told him it was partly for the route and partly because I liked the look of the town when I'd come through it looking for work. Both of those things were true. I didn't tell him the third part. He was 9 years old, and the third part could wait until he was ready for it, which I had a feeling would be sooner than I was ready to give it. We were 3/4 through the route when we came around the bend on Route 9, and I pulled into the lot of the new distribution center, Voss Freight Solutions. It had gone up on the old Hendershot property in the spring, a clean building, not large, with a glass front that caught the morning light and a flagpole out front. I had a slim stack of certified mail for them and a box too wide to fit the slot. Stay close, I told Sam. He was already out of the truck. He had a way of moving through the world that I'd never quite been able to account for, easy, open, unafraid of strangers, which was different from being careless about them. He pushed through the glass door ahead of me, and by the time I had the package tucked under my arm and the certified envelopes in my hand, he was already talking to the woman behind the front desk. She was young, maybe 25, and she was smiling at him the way people always smiled at Sam, like he just said something reasonable that they hadn't expected from someone his size. I signed off on the delivery log, got my receipts, and was turning to go when a door opened at the back of the lobby. The woman who stepped out was looking down at a folder in her hand. She had dark hair that had a little gray starting at one temple, and she was dressed the way a person dresses when they've built something from the ground up, and they know it, not flashy, just clean and put together and certain. She said something to the woman at the desk without looking up, something about a shipment confirmation, and then she raised her eyes. She saw Sam first. He turned to look at her the way he looked at everyone, direct, unhurried, curious. She stopped walking. I've thought about that moment many times since. There was nothing in it that should have stopped a person. Sam was just a boy in a gray sweatshirt with a granola bar wrapper sticking out of his pocket. But she went still in a way that wasn't quite shock and wasn't quite recognition. It was something between the two, something that happens when a part of your brain catches a signal before the rest of you does. "Hi," Sam said. "Hi," she said. "We're delivering mail. My dad let me come." She looked at him for another moment. Then she said, "What's your name?" "Sam." She nodded slowly. Her eyes moved to me, and I could see her trying to place me, the uniform, the truck visible through the glass door, the ordinary shape of a man on a Saturday morning route. Nothing that should have meant anything. "Nice name," she said, and looked back at Sam. Sam tilted his head. "My dad picked it. He says it was his grandfather's." "That's a good reason for a name." "That's what I said." He considered her for a moment. "Do you run this place?" "I do." That's a lot of work. It is, she agreed, and something in her face loosened, not quite a smile, but close. I stepped in. Sam, come on, we've still got 8 stops. He didn't move yet. He had that quality of finishing a thought before he let himself be redirected, which sometimes tried my patience and sometimes made me quietly proud. He looked at the woman one more time and said, "My dad looked for you for a long time." The lobby went quiet. Not just quiet the way a room goes quiet when someone says something unexpected. Quiet the way a room goes when a door opens that wasn't supposed to be there. She looked at him, then she looked at me. I hadn't said a word. I was standing with a stack of certified mail receipts in my hand, and my heart doing something I hadn't let it do in years. I made myself breathe. "Sam," I said quietly, "go wait by the truck." He read something in my voice. He'd always been good at that, and he went, pushing through the glass door without argument, granola bar wrapper flapping from his pocket. The woman at the front desk found something very important to look at on her computer screen. I set the receipts down on the counter. She was looking at me the way a person looks at something they can't quite make sense of, not with fear, not with anger, with a kind of suspended disbelief, like she was waiting for something to resolve. "Miriam," I said. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away. "I know this is not the right way for this to happen," I said. "There isn't a right way, I understand that." Her voice came out carefully. "Joel." "Yeah." She set the folder down on the front desk, very precisely, like she was making sure it didn't fall. Then she said, "You're dead." "I know that's what they told you." "They found the boat." "They found the boat. They didn't find me for 4 months. I was on a barrier island south of the shipping lane, a fishing family. I was in bad shape for a long time." I kept my voice level. This was a thing I'd practiced in my head 10,000 times, the plain telling of it, without apology, without drama, without asking her to feel anything she wasn't ready to feel. When I could walk again, I started trying to get home. It took another 7 months. By the time I got back to the States, you'd already been declared a widow and you'd moved. I spent 2 years trying to find you. She was very still. "I found out about Sam through my cousin Dina. She kept in touch with your neighbor. She wrote to me, the letter was delayed, I was moving around, and by the time I got it, Sam was 7 months old and you were gone. She said you'd placed him with a family in Kettering, that you weren't able to." I stopped. "I'm not telling you this to judge anything. I'm telling you so you know I didn't leave you. I didn't leave either of you." She said nothing. Her hands were on the counter now, both of them flat. "I went to Kettering. I got Sam. His foster placement was good, they were good people, but he was mine and I brought him home." I glanced out through the glass. Sam was sitting on the running board of the postal truck, eating the second half of his granola bar, watching a crow work at something in the gravel. That was 2 years ago. I've been in Lakeford since then. I drive the route, I pick him up from school, I make dinner, I help with math homework. He's a good kid, Miriam, you'd think so. She made a sound that wasn't quite a word. "I kept looking for you," I said. "I looked for 3 more years before I stopped. I couldn't find you under your name, and you'd incorporated this company under your mother's name. I didn't know. I picked this route because I needed steady work and it was available. I had no idea this building was yours. I didn't know until last spring when the truck came up on the signage." She finally spoke. "You've been driving past my building." "Every Saturday." She pressed her fingers against her eyes for a moment. When she lowered her hand, her face was composed, but not in the way people are composed when they're holding everything back. It was composed the way a person looks after a long run, spent and clear at the same time. "He said you looked for me," she said. "I told him when he was old enough to ask about his mother that I looked for her for a long time but couldn't find her, and that none of it was her fault." I paused. "He asks about it sometimes. He's not angry about it. He just wanted to understand." "How do you," she stopped, started again. "How do you raise a child without being angry?" "I was angry," I said. "For a while, not at you, at the situation, at the boat and the island and the time and all the years. But Sam didn't have anything to do with any of that, and it wasn't useful to him. So I put it somewhere and I did the work. She looked through the glass at him. He'd finished the granola bar and was now talking to the crow, which had moved closer. He was saying something with great seriousness, and the crow was listening with its head tilted, which Sam would have appreciated. "He talks to birds," I said. She made a sound that might have been a laugh, very small but real. "I'm not here to ask you for anything," I said. "I want you to know that. I'm not here to ask you to account for any decisions you made when you thought I was dead. I'm not here to make anything hard. I picked the receipts back up from the counter because I needed something to do with my hands. I needed you to know he exists, and that he's all right. He's better than all right. He's curious and he's kind and he's got a good head on his shoulders, and I'm not going to pretend that I did it entirely on my own. There were good people along the way who helped us both. But he's here. He's healthy. He had pancakes this morning, and he debated me about whether crows are smarter than dogs for most of the first 8 stops. He's 9 years old and he's fine." She was quiet for a long time. Through the glass, Sam had given up on the crow and was now lying on his back on the running board with his feet propped on the wheel well, looking up at the sky. The September light was gold on his face. "Can I?" she started. "Yes," I said before she finished. "Whatever you want, as fast or as slow as you want. I'm not going anywhere." I went out through the glass door. Sam sat up on the running board when he heard it open. "Crow left," he said. "I see that. It took a piece of gravel. I don't know why. I told it that wasn't food. Maybe it knows something you don't." He considered this seriously, which was how he considered most things. Then he looked past me at the building. "Is she okay?" "She's going to be." He nodded, satisfied with that, and slid off the running board to walk around to the passenger side. I started the engine. We sat there for a moment in the idling quiet. "Dad," Sam said. "Yeah." "She's got your eyes." I looked at him. He was already looking out the window, watching the field across the road, where the soybeans had gone full gold at the edges, and a pair of red-tailed hawks were turning slow circles in the blue. He said it the same way he'd say anything as a plain fact, offered up simply because it was true and he thought I should know it. I pulled the truck out of the lot and back onto Route 9. 8 stops left. The morning was still warm and wide, and Sam put his hand back out the window, fingers spread, riding the air. Behind us, through the rearview mirror, I could see the glass front of the building catching the light, and I could see her standing at the window, watching us go. She was still there when we rounded the bend. I didn't look back again. I didn't need to. 20 years is a long time to carry something. But Sam was right beside me and the road was straight, and for the first time in longer than I could easily say, the carrying felt light.